In these next couple of steps, we're going to reconfigure our application just a little bit. If we go back and take a look at our front.php file in our editor, one of the things that we're going to do is take this mapping and move it to a separate file. So far, this front.php file is fairly generic. It could actually be used for multiple applications, except for this mapping component here, which is custom to this particular application. Once we move this out, this will be generalized enough to use elsewhere. So simultaneously, with us using this routing component, we're also going to move this content into a separate file called app.php. Let's create our app.php file first. We'll jump to the resource pack directory, and we're going to copy this 20-second step, app.php, moving routing to a separate file, over to our examples folder. Paste it in, and rename it app.php. Let's open it up and take a look. In order to use the routing components more easily, we're using a use keyword here for Symfony component routing. And the way we use it is by first creating a route collection. This is kind of like an array, but it comes with tools to allow us to easily adjust the items in that array. So we do this by creating a route collection, which is inside of the routing namespace, so routing/root collection, and then we can begin adding routes. And we do so with the add method inside of our route collection object. The first parameter is the name of our route. Now this could be anything. It just so happens that it corresponds to the actual URL, and in general that's a good naming convention, but it's not always going to be practical. This needs to be a unique key, and it will allow you to adjust this later on if you need to. The next parameter is an instance of the route object. In this first example, it's taking two parameters. The first is the route, and the second is an array of parameters that can get passed to the route. So the route here contains a variable, which is delineated with these curly braces. The key of this variable, or the name of it, is called name, and we're setting a default for this here in this second parameter. We could have multiple parameters here too. Let's say we set it to accept an adjective. Then we can set a default for that here by doing comma adg is awesome. If we didn't supply a default here, let's say we removed this altogether, and we left just a single parameter here, this would mean that this would be required. And we'll play with this in a moment after we get this functional. Our second route that we add is called by. Again, this is just a unique identifier for this route. We create a new route object for the second parameter, and we specify the path. But because there's no parameters for this path, we don't need to pass any additional parameters into the route object instantiation. And then finally in this file, we're returning routes, and I'll explain why in a moment. Now in order for this to work, we need to adjust our front controller too.